Chapter 5. The Swayamvara at Kashi. The young prince Vichitravirya was now the center of Satyavati's hopes. He was her only son. Bhishma was a father to him. Years passed. The time came when Bhishma thought of his marriage. The king of Kashi had three lovely daughters, Amba, Ambika, Ambalika. These princesses, though Bhishma were fit enough to be the brides for his brother, there came to him news that the king of Kashi was holding a Swayamvara for his daughters. Bhishma could not brook the insult offered him. It had been the custom to give the daughters of Kashi to the princes of the Kuru house. Bhishma resented this departure from the usual custom. He descended on the city where the Swayamvara was being held. Preparations for the Swayamvara were indeed thorough. Kings from all over Bharatvarsha had come to attend it. The hall was bright with the jewels worn by the princesses who had assembled there. The air was thick with the perfume of the flowers which they were wearing. They all saw Bhishma. They were smiles of derision, sneers, and contemptuous remarks. Some said, "Look at the Devavrata, a confirmed bachelor, who has come to the Swayamvara of these lovely princesses. Indeed, who can resist the law of nature? This beauty is enough to weaken the austerities of even rishis. What then can we say of a poor mortal like Devavrata? He has forgotten the oath he took to satisfy his father. He has come hoping that he may be chosen by one of the princesses. Vain hopes! What vanity he has! Who will look at this man, well past the prime of youth, when we are all here?" A voice like the clap of thunder greeted the kings who had assembled. Bhishma said, "Indeed, I have come to the Swayamvara. I am going to carry these maidens to the Hastinapura. There will be the brides of my brother Vichitravirya, the Kuru monarch. They will be queens of the Kuru house. If you have the valor enough, bravery enough, you are welcome to rescue them from me. I am prepared to fight anyone who will dare to oppose me." Bhishma took 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 the fight. Anyone who dares to oppose me. Bhishma took the princesses one by the hand and placed them in his chariot. He was ready to proceed towards his home. The kings were furious. The king of Kashi looked at them for help. They all rushed at the departing prince. Bhishma stopped his chariot. There ensued a fiery battle between the kings on the one side and Bhishma on the other. They were defeated easily. The chariot proceeded once again towards Hastinapura, the Kuru capital. The king of Salva was a great hero. He was one of the many who had come to attend the Swayamvara. He offered to fight with Bhishma. His fighting was of no mean order. He wounded Bhishma in the chest. Everyone was amazed at the fighting of Salva, who was able to wound Bhishma. Enraged at the challenge of Salva, Bhishma fought with more valor than he had displayed so far. Bhishma killed the charioteer of Salva, then his horses. Salva was without a chariot and he was without a weapon. He was on the ground at the mercy of his opponent. In his nobleness, Bhishma left him without killing him and went unchallenged the rest of the way to Hastinapura. Bhishma arrived in the city. The people crowded in the streets to see the three maids who looked like three moons in captivity. They were so very beautiful. The king's apartments were soon reached. Bhishma descended from the chariot. The princess followed him. He reached the apartments of Satyavati. He stood them before her and said, "Look, mother, look at these brides I have brought for our Vichitravirya." Satyavati was pleased. The young prince was sent for. He looked at the maidens and was pleased. He looked at the love and gratitude at Bhishma and fell at his feet. Bhishma embraced him and his eyes were wet with tears of love. He loved this brother of his as a father loves his son. Please, if I may say something, said a soft, frightened voice. Bhishma turned around. It was Amba, the eldest of the three princesses. With her form trembling like a leaf, she addressed the queen mother and Bhishma together. She said, when my lord Bhishma entered the hall and carried us away by force, I was in the act of garlanding Salva. I had already chosen him as my husband. Why did you not tell me there? Asked Bhishma. You should have told me before I left Kashi. Why were you silent? How could I? My lord, said Amba, you were so abrupt in your action. Before I could gather up enough courage to talk, we were halfway through the journey. Hence I thought I would speak now. They were all upset by this new complication which had set in. The young prince said, I do not think it is right to marry a woman whose heart is in the keeping of someone else. Bhishma and Satyavati felt that he was right. Bhishma spoke to Amba. You have chosen a husband already. We do not think it is right to keep you here. I will provide the proper escort for you. You are at the liberty to go to Salva. With her heart full of love, Amba reached the kingdom of Salva. She went to the king and said, look at me, my lord. In the Swamvara hall, I was in the act of garlanding you when Bhishma carried us all away. When we reached Hastinapura, I told him that I had already chosen my husband. The noble Bhishma sent me to you. Please accept me. With a loud laugh, Salva said, accept you? Do you think I am a beggar to accept gifts from my enemy? Devavrata took you by your right hand. He won you in battle. He defeated all of us. According to the dharma of Kshatriyas, the man who wins a girl in fight is her lord. Bhishma is your lord. He is your husband. Go to him. Ask him to marry you. I cannot accept you. With her heart filled with pain and humiliation, Amba retraced her steps to Hastinapura and stood in the presence of Bhishma. Tears were running down her face. Bhishma was shocked at the condition of the young girl. He said, what ails thee, fair maiden? I am surprised to see you here. I sent you to Salva. Why have you come back? Amba said, my journey was fruitless. I am now richer in the knowledge of Dharma Shastra. Salva looks on me as his sister. He says that a man who wins a girl in fight in her lawful husband is her lawful husband. You took me by my right hand and placed me in your chariot and later fought with all the kings there. You, I hear, must marry me. I have no one now. You must grant me life. Let not my womanhood be wasted. Please marry me. Bhishma was overcome with compassion for the woman who stood weeping in front of him. His heart went out to her in pity. He could not speak, for tears were choking him, tears that he dared not shed. He was sorry for this woman whose life was ruined because of him. He spoke to her gently. He said, I am grieved at the way things have taken shape. I cannot marry you. You know that I have sworn to be a brahmachari all my life. How can I marry you? Please abandon those thoughts from your mind. It is not possible. If you had only told me in Kashi that you had already chosen your husband, these things would not have happened. No one can control fate. You can never be my bride. You can go back to Salva and coax him to marry you. I cannot help you out of my predicament. I would have if things had been different. But now, bound as I am by my terrible oath, I cannot help you in the manner you suggest. Bhishma walked away from her presence. Poor, ill-starred Amba spent 6 years thus without avail. With her heart full of hatred for Bhishma, who was the cause of her unhappiness, she went to the forest. She met several ascetics there. She told them the story of her life and expressed her desire to stay with them and perform penance. They were very dubious. They did not want a young unmarried woman in their midst. They did not know what they were to do. To their great relief, there came to their hermitage the great Hotravahana, the grandfather of Amba. He heard about her tragedy. He spoke comforting words to her. He said, the great Bhargava is a great friend of mine. Bhargava is the guru of Bhishma. He will command his pupil to obey him. He will make Bhishma marry you. Bhishma cannot disobey his guru. Few days later, Bhagwan Bhargava came to the forest. Hotravahana told him about the pathetic story of Amba. The great sage was sorry for her and said, I will certainly speak to Bhishma about it. If I ask him to marry you, he will certainly obey me. He sent for his beloved pupil Bhishma. Hearing that his guru wanted him, Bhishma hurried to his presence. He fell at his feet and said, What would your gracious what would your gracious presence? Why have you sent for me? Bhargava raised him and embraced him. He said, My child, I want you to help a person in distress. Do you see this beautiful woman? Bhishma turned around and looked at Amba. He said, I know her, my lord. She is a woman who has been cheated by fate. She wanted to marry Salva, but he would not have her. I could not, since I have sworn not to marry. Hence she said she had to leave Hastinapura and go away. But what has she to do with my coming to your presence? Bhargava said, I have promised her that I would make you marry her. You must help me to keep my word. You must marry her. Bhishma turned his pained eyes on his guru. He said, My lord, you know how about the terrible oath I have taken. I cannot marry. Even if you ask me to, I cannot marry. Bhargava tried his best to convince Bhishma that his duty was to obey the commands of his guru, but it was not possible for him to convince Bhishma. He was firm. Bhargava was furious with him. He said, I will curse you, or else you must fight a duel with me. Bhishma said in a dilemma. He loved his guru. He did not want to be cursed by Bhargava. That was the dread alternative. He had to choose. He preferred to fight. He said, My lord, you know how much I love you. You ask me to fight with you. I would rather fight with you. I do not want to be cursed by you, my lord, not by you who love me. A terrible battle was fought between the two. It was watched by the lords of the heavens too. The battle raged for days and nights. There was no lessening of the valor of either. On the last day of the fight, Bhishma had decided to spend the astra called Praswapa, that meant the destruction of the world. The gods, led by Narada and Rudra, intervened and said, Bhishma, stop this fighting. Do not send this astra. You are not the person to destroy the world. It has to be done by someone else. They convinced him that he should be the first to withdraw from the fight, since it would be an insult to his guru if he was made to stop first from fighting. Bhishma agreed. The fight was stopped. Bhargava embraced his pupil and said, You are the greatest of all fighters. I could not defeat you. He turned to Amba and said, My child, I try my best. As you saw, I cannot shake Bhishma's resolution. He will not move away from his path of truth. Please go away. Your desire is not to be achieved.